hey, Eric, you saw this issue, so you started defining, are we a team or are we in competition? And that's greatly helped me, right? If you take that ideology of, are we any conflict, but a conflict doesn't have to be like an actual fight. It can actually just be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What is a conversation? Welcome to Empowered Homefront Podcast, where we talk about health, wealth, and relationships. And let's not forget about the most important one, and that is faith. Because I believe that we all have been lied to, and we're going to skill stack our way all the way to success and bring you on the journey with us.
So, anyway, Eric, let's go ahead and get into it, man. First off, how you doing?
Man, I am good, getting over sickness. The whole family's sick, but unfortunately for them, they're sick and I'm not, because I don't get sick. I don't participate in being sick. But,
as your nose clogged.
Yeah.
Allergies are kicking my ass.
Dude.
I know.
When you was talking about Tom, though, you shared that story, and then you said that he's created a life where money is not a problem because he has enough money to do what all he wants to do. And he ended it by saying that Tom is an anomaly because he's one of the few situations where money doesn't create happiness.
Yeah, what I mean is, like, he doesn't have to have a shit ton of it to be happy. But I see what you're getting at, is he has the money to do what he wants, therefore he is happy and he's good. It's good to go.
That's what it means to have enough money. That's what it means to be financially free.
That is true. Well, this is why we do the podcast, because in the middle of things you bring, maybe I just don't think sometimes.
Well, that's what, man, whenever I heard you say it, I'm like, okay, that's an interesting perspective, but from my eyes, man, like, Tom is living his best life,
He is. I've never once seen him upset. Not once. Yeah. Even after, because I've known him for years. Like, I met him through my sister because he was my sister's friend's boyfriend. And I think Tom's like 3 or 4 years younger than me. And I met him.
Say again, you just said he was your sister's boyfriend's boyfriend?
No, my sister's friend's boyfriend.
Sister friend's boy. Okay. And your sister's friend was a girl.
Yeah.
Clarify.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my ears, man. Like, maybe it's my ears. Just like, things are sounding weird.
You got allergies in your ears. But anyway, enough of this banter. One thing so what we're going to get into today is the digital age and the lost art of deep conversations. Someone I know put out a video the other day on Instagram, and Eric, I don't think you can hear it if I bring it up on my page, but you were the one that posted it, and it was about you were you're doing your yellow hoodie talks, and it was about you and Lori, like,
going the hoodie.
You only wear it whenever you do those walks and talks.
I've owned that hoodie since I was 20 years old. I trained to join the military in that hoodie.
So it has some value. It's invaluable to you. It's like sentimental.
Yes, that, and every time I wear it, I look like Big Bird running down.
But you had mentioned you were doing the 75 hard thing, and that's the program that Annie Frisella came up with. And you and Lori would go on these 45-minute walks or whatever, 1 to 2 times a day. I think it was twice a day. You said you would do it. And at first it was difficult. And I don't think you brought your phones with you. And you had said something that struck me, like really struck a chord in me, it was difficult to have a conversation with your own wife for a little bit on those walks. And then it eventually got better. And I thought, like, I've had this podcast framework like written out for a long time, and I was going to do it by myself or with Erica. But I was like, you know what? I saw that video again the other day that you had posted. Maybe I was editing it in the one of the podcast episodes or whatever, but that really struck something with me, and I was like, dude, let's talk about that, because I have been on my phone a lot lately this past week, and it's doing nonsense. Like training at work takes a lot out of me. Like my brain is just fried at the end of the day because I'm up there just working 6-7 hours, just training. And on my breaks or when I get home, I immediately just turn my brain off and I turn my phone on, and I'm scrolling. We've had this talk before. Like I justify it as, oh, I need a break, but like just to do anything. But my brain is still working. Like I should just be sitting there, like closing my eyes, honestly, and just kind of like meditating, I guess. But I looked at the screen time, and it wasn't on social media. It wasn't on Google Chrome, searching the web or anything. My main screen time has been playing a card game on my phone. Do you know, you ever play or know the card game Phase 10? It's kind of like an Uno style game. And I just play it. I was just sitting there playing it. And you know what's funny is I keep playing it and the computer keeps beating me, and I keep getting madder and madder and madder at it. And I'm like, oh, let's keep going. I'll win this time. But yeah, even I was getting caught up in it this past week. But the first point that I want to get into, and you've talked about this a lot, is I have it written down in here, but I want to start off with the second point first. So, you and Lori went on those walks, and you created what I have written here is, quote, a digital free time zone. Obviously, I don't want to share your story any more than I have, but how difficult really was it for you to have a conversation? Because I know you're a great salesman. You can cold call anybody and fucking sell them your boogers if you wanted to. Like, you're that good. So how difficult was it for you? Was it harder for you to actually start those conversations up, or was it like Lori wasn't on the receiving end and reciprocating it? You know, like tell me about that personal experience you had.
Yeah, so I still work on this, right?
Mhm.
I mean, me and Lori's still working on our communication, and now for the last 2 years, I've been in this new world and learning all these new skills and skill stacking and building, multiple companies. And Lori wasn't a part of any of that. She still really isn't a part of that. And that was a conscious choice that me and her made in the beginning, because through our experience of building a real estate portfolio, we had like a lot of bad fights, a lot of disagreements. And this struggle, I'm constantly working on it with Lori. Like, me and her are constantly working on it together. And there's always a battle, right? Like, even talking about it right now, I'm trying not to blame her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what constantly happens. We want to blame the other person. And I constantly want to blame her, but at the same time, I am constantly reflecting and trying to figure out, okay, how can I accept ownership in this issue? And the reason I say that is because during the times where we're building our portfolio and doing real estate and, just really in the game where I can leave air traffic, dude, like, it's nonstop. It's nonstop, dude. Like, I go to air traffic, I get off air traffic, I go to a project or multiple projects, and then I swing by and get Lori, or Lori's already on the job site with the kids, and like, we're hashing things out, trying to figure things out, and mistakes are happening. I'm taking out my frustration on her, and she's just there as a punching bag, right?
Yeah. There.
And Well, actually, I was thinking about this yesterday, I think. Yeah, yesterday. And I realized that all these things that I am doing, I have a certain skill set. Lori does not have those same skill sets. But yet, because I am in the trenches and I feel all this weight, all this pressure, all of this, all these failures, and I'm just accepting these punches just left and right, just failing, never feeling like I'm getting ahead. And then all of a sudden, we'll get a win. And it's like, this is what I worked so hard for. And then it's over with and I'm straight to the next punch. But the brunt force of that is me coming back home and having a wife that stands behind me. And then she takes just as many punches as I do, but she doesn't have those skill sets. She hasn't developed herself the same way I have. Right. And this is like, my thought process. Like I was talking to her about, serving the Deal Boss community and the Empowered Homefront community. I'm like, I need you to take all these things that we're doing, Lori. I need you to put them on paper and then create product. That way we can help these people. Like right now we're, in the process of coming up with several great, valuable, free things for our community members. But these free things, to me, they're not free. They're worth a lot of money. Like I want to create a free thing that's worth over $1,000.
Yeah.
And, it's that level skill sets, right? Skill stacking. And I'm sitting there talking to Lori about it and I'm getting so frustrated. And I'm just like, look, this is what I realized. I was like, you just don't have whatever that thing is to create the thing. I was like, I get it. Let me do that. And then I need you to go and develop another skill. That way you can help complement that to expand my bandwidth, right? Because I'm overloaded. I'm overwhelmed. I'm this, I'm that. And then I turn around and I take it out on Lori. And this relationship goes over and over and over and over again, and it repeats. And the reason I share that is because, what's the alternative, right? Every time I see an issue now, like I look at it and I'm like, okay, if I don't do this, what would be the exact opposite of doing this? And that was what we initially tried whenever I first started this. And it was, Lori, we cannot work together. Lori, we cannot have a business together. Lori, I want to go out here and make money and create the life that we want. I don't want you to be a part of it because we cannot work together. Okay. And Lori, I just want you to take care of the kids. Lori, I want you to, run the homeschool. I want you to take them to all their appointments. Lori, I want you to manage our rentals, right? Listen to all these things coming out of my mouth, guys.
You
right?
sound angry.
No, like listen to all of the low, like that list that I just gave to Lori is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I'm over here saying, Lori, you're not doing enough. Lori, you're not good enough. Lori, you don't have the skills, right? Like I'm saying those things, but yet that list that I just gave my wife to do for this first, year is just like, you go over there, stay away from me, stay out of this. And we're trying to find that balance to work together. And anyway, through the learning curve, like now I'm pulling her back into the operation because I need her to roll this next part out. And it's like, how can we work together? And this comes back to what is an A player, what is a B player, what is a C player. So whenever you talk about building a team, you only want to build a team of A players. What is a player? An A player who takes personal responsibility and accountability on delivering results. That's a definition of an A player. All right. So anything less than that is a B, C player. You don't want those on your team. But yet, unless you have the financial means to recruit those A players, pay for those A players, you're going to be stuck with B, C players, right? Hopefully just B players who can actually do the job and not cause issues, right? Because culture is very important. Now, why do I bring up, what is an A player was a B player? Because a lot of this things that we run into, that's what I turn to. I turn to Lori. I'm like, oh, Lori, you're just not an A player. Like, you're just not an A player. Just not an A player. Right. And there's this saying, I can't remember who says it, man, but it's like, if you judge a fish for not being able to climb a tree, then the fish will think his entire life that he's a failure, that he's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I actually have heard that before.
I can't remember who says that, but like, you think about that. It's just like, okay, like, why would a fish ever be able to climb a tree? Like, fish belongs in water, right? Fish doesn't have anything to do with trees. Why would I ever think that? But if you constantly tell that fish, well, why can't you climb a tree? Right? Now, how does that fish feel? And, through this experience of me, trying to take off my husband hat and put on my, leader hat and boss hat, employer hat, whatever that is, business owner hat, whatever you want to call it. And then, Lori take off her wife hat and come in and put in there. It's just like, are you a fish? And that's essentially, that's my message, right? Because what I realize is like, even though I never lay hands on my wife, like, I do not, like, that's a no-go for me, right? If you hit a woman, right? Like, well,
it's a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. That's a principle I never falter on, right? Like, my boys, like, nope.
Don't hate your sister.
Even though that I never physically abused my wife, she's still my biggest punching bag. Because I'm constantly in this battle. I'm constantly doing these things. And the person that I go to the most is Lori. The person that I talk to the most is Lori. Whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't see an exit out, what do? Lori, why can't you do more? Lori, why can't you help me do this? And I beat her up, right?
Yeah.
I am abusive to my wife.
Yeah. Let me stop you right there real quick. So I want to bring this back just a tiny bit. So what I'm hearing from you is you're just talking to your wife when you say all these things. You're not having a conversation.
Yep.
When did you realize that? And when did it start happening? Because I see a lot more, like the way that I've seen you develop as a person with your communication skills. Like you and me just used to talk to each other. Just that's it. But you and me have conversations. Some of our best conversations happen on this podcast.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff we've done. When did you realize where it was like a, oh shit moment where you're like, I'm just talking to Lori. Like we need to actually have conversations about this.
That's what I'm trying to build up to, right? So with this story of me realizing that my wife is my punching bag, right? Me realizing that I beat my wife, right? And then actually saying that out loud, like that's hard for me to say. But at the same time, I want to say it because I need to get over it. That way I can actually listen to her more. What you're asking is when did I figure out that I was just always talking at my wife and not having a conversation with her?
Yeah.
And that was years ago. I just didn't know the answer.
Oh shit. Yeah.
I didn't know the answer because I haven't went through the journey yet to figure out what it means to actually have a conversation with my wife. Sure, we can have a conversation about little things, right? Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like sitting here and having a conversation like, are we going to go to the park or go hunting or whatever that is, right? Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real life shit. And she turns into a punching bag because who handles the real life stuff? I handle the real life stuff, right? But listen to the words I'm using. I handle the real life stuff. That's me not being a team player. And whenever you get married, you are picking your team to play the game of life with.
Absolutely.
Right? And what happens is one person develops themselves, the other person develops themselves, but they develop themselves a different way. But yet this person right here, it can be me. I'm growth oriented. Like I am so growth oriented. Like that's all I talk about. It's future, 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 growth, growth, growth. And therefore I never feel like I'm good enough. And me and Lori's had this talk. She's like, you'll never be happy. I'm like, I am happy. I'm actually happy right now, but this is me happy.
Erica has said the exact same thing to me. She's like, you'll never have enough.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
What's the issue is people over here who develops a different way, they cannot accept that. And therefore they hold down this person over here who wants more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And this person over here just can't understand because they don't look at it that way. Like Lori, very much family oriented. I'm very family oriented. And that's the reason we make a good couple. That's the reason we got married. That's what reason I fell in love with her is because like family values, right? She she holds those principles that I find so dear. The reason we was able to make it through all these hard times, and God knows that we've had our challenges, like crazy challenges, but yet we're still together, and now we're stronger than ever, and we're 18 going on 19 years together. And reason I say that is through all of this learning, through all this stuff that we've done, I told Lori 6 years ago, I told her, I was like, listen, I'm going to start doing this real estate thing and we're going to become a millionaire. 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 And I told her, I was like, before Kaylee turns 15 years old, I'm going to have the life of my dreams and we're going to be like completely financially free and I'm going to walk away from air traffic. Kaylee is 12. I walked away from air traffic 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say it's about 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So those goals, like I am hitting, Lori doesn't realize those goals even exist until it's too late. Right.
Yeah.
We like, this is another thing too. People don't realize whenever people talk about millionaire status, billionaire status, all those things, that doesn't mean cash in the bank, right? There are two different terms of that, right? I do not have $1 million in the bank, but I've got almost $2 million worth of assets that has net equity in it, right?
There it is.
Clear assets. So
I was waiting for that word.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to define that because you go look at my bank account, I'm probably broker than you are, right? Like I do not have money. But I've got assets that constantly pump out money, right? But building all this, Lori doesn't understand it, right? And even now, dude, I'm building Deal Boss Project and I'm building Empowered Homefront. And like my mission is to make high level wealth creation through real estate accessible to everyone. All right, we have a goal this year to turn over 1,000 American families into property owners, into investors. Mm-hmm. That way they can go on the same journey because I know the power of it and I know how to do it, right? And what's crazy is I asked Lori to write down, and try to create like this little product, this little intro, this little explanation of like whatever this little segment is that I know she was a part of. She was there. She was there for all those lessons that I went through, but yet she didn't receive the lesson. So when we talk now, she was there with me. She was standing right beside my side. Right. She was there whenever we lost, $80,000 from a contractor. She was there whenever the city shows up and like shuts down job sites. Right. But she doesn't know how to fix them. She can't share the story. And to me, that is so frustrating because what I'm talking about, this podcast is about having deep conversations. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to get to is, me and Lori, we developed differently, went through the exact same journey. Mm-hmm. Lessons I took away are not the same lessons she has. And therefore, whenever I try to talk about it with her, I am constantly beating her up because what's important to me is not important to her. Let me ask you. I mean, did I deliver that okay? Like,
No, you made complete sense when you
yeah,
brought it. The one thing with you is you have valuable lessons because you have more experience. And this is what I love about you and me working together and stuff like that is the other day, you and me had like a 2 text message deep conversation. And what I mean by that is we had a conversation, you and me, about how um I guess I could sum it up as to growth because, you've been big on growth lately, like open about it out there in your tweets, in your posts on Instagram, everything. And you were discussing, I don't know if it was in the last episode or if it was just you and me on the phone or FaceTime or something. And you were talking about how you want to better yourself, I think, with, was it charisma or empathy? It was something like that. And you texted me, "Hey, bro, I know what you're going through right now is a difficult time. I love you guys, and if you need anything, if you need to talk, hit me up." Or it was along something like that.
yeah,
And even though this episode is supposed to be talking about getting away from the the phones, the screen time, stuff like that, and actually having a talk with somebody, that right there between you and me was a deep conversation, and it was through the phone, which is what I want to. What was another point I wanted to bring up too in this is how powerful these things are, these devices, how powerful of a tool they are. And if you use it in the correct way, you can have a deep conversation through it. You can reach out and get your message across. And you do that very, very well, I think. My experience with you and stuff like that.
yeah.
Um, but I can relate to with the growth where there's a camera right there is. And I think it goes both ways because you really brought to light in my life the skill stacking, you know? And I did some math right here I want to share with you real quick.
Oh, really?
Yes. So you know me in numbers, and I know you're a numbers guy too. So I averaged, so say every day I average 4 hours on my phone. Well, times that by a week. That's 28 hours. That's over a day I've wasted on my phone. Let's times that by 52. That's 1,456 hours a year I've wasted on my phone. I got my first smartphone when I was 23. I'll be 36 in 2 weeks. So we'll times that by 13. And this is where I'm going to wrap it back into skill stacking. You ready? That's 18,928 hours. That's almost, we'll round up to 20,000 hours. What do they say about becoming an expert or a master in something? It says 10,000 hours or that 10,000th rep. Not saying that I would give up my phone completely because I do use it for certain things like that are beneficial. But those hours right there, I'll even cut out 10,000 of those 20,000 hours. That right there, if I would cut my time in half over the last 13 years, that is a skill right there that I could be a master at. And that could be something that you don't know. That could be something that my wife doesn't know. And it's because I decided to use my time unwisely, if that's a word, and sit there and just, goof off on my device, not bettering myself, not growing. And I wrote some notes about that as well while you were talking. And the one thing that Erica and I have started developing that we're beginning this week, on my days off, Tuesday and Wednesday, is this might be something that you already do, but it's something that we don't, is we are taking an hour out of our time once a week to put everything down, turn off everything electronic, and having a family meeting. And it's just me and her because, our boy's not old enough to share any input, But the things that we've talked about discussing was, what was the date that we had the meeting, participants, and we wanted to include things like our feelings. How are we feeling during this conversation? What are we feeling at this current moment? How have we felt this past week? What are some ideas that we have for the family? Who's going to be responsible for that idea? The projected date. And we get deep into stuff like that. Like how do we feel finances are going? How do we feel like our individual projects? And what's one thing, because we want to keep it simple, is what's one thing that we learned this past week that has bettered ourselves? And I proposed that idea to her, and she was like, oh, absolutely. Like, yes, let's please do that. Because our communication has been the weakest link in our marriage chain. Like I had the conversation with you about the finances, about how we weren't financially married. And she's taken over that, and there hasn't been anything wrong. I just verified with, hey, when are you doing this? Oh, I'm doing it on every Monday. I'll double check and make sure our goals are in line with our finances. All right, cool. I don't have to look at it. It's actually been harder on me than her because I still wanted complete control over it. But with that honest and open communication, she is like, yeah, I got it. I got to take care of you. Worry about what you're doing. You go in there and do your podcast. You work on the stuff you got to work with. And another thing too, that I started doing myself, and I have to kind of get at her with it, is no phones around the baby whenever we're playing with him or something. Because, dude, I find myself so often when he's just sitting there on his back or sitting up just chewing on something. I think his top front teeth are coming in, so he's been a maniac lately. And it's like, oh, I'm not doing anything to entertain this kid. Like, he just wants to chew on his little teether thing. Like, I find myself like reaching for my phone, like, oh man, I'll just look at this. And I felt so fucking guilty the other day when I reached for it after I actively told myself, like I had like a mantra in my head, like no phone, And I legit felt guilty for almost picking that up, because even now I have conversations with him, I have deep conversations with a 9-month-old. I don't care what anybody fucking says. I will sit there and have conversations with him. I'll talk to him about his toy. I'll explain to him what I'm doing, because he's getting interactive now and he wants to see what I'm doing more often and stuff like that. And what I'm trying to say is that we've scheduled times where we aren't on our phones so we can have those conversations, so we can talk about where we are growing in our lives and as a family. And the one thing that we wanted to practice in that is active listening to one another. Because like you said, it goes back to what you were saying, where you were just speaking to your wife and not having conversations. I've been super, super guilty of that, of like, you need to do this. Like, why isn't this getting done? Like, you don't understand because of this. And I wanted to actually, what is active listening? And obviously I'll get your thoughts on this as well, is I feel like a lot of people don't participate in active listening. They have those just superficial conversations or small talk or whatever, and there's nothing really exchanged. I know, I saw your eyes roll right there. If anything, you cannot stand small talk. So I'll just read like a definition that I found. Active listening is a technique used in communication that requires the listener to fully concentrate, understand, and respond to the person that is speaking, and actually remembering what is being said. It's listening with all your senses, as opposed to passive listening, where the listener might not be fully engaged or attentive. Using eye contact, nodding. Like, my thing is, my way of showing that I'm active listening is I go, yeah, okay. Like, that's my way of like acknowledging the speaker. And when you do that, you actually absorb the information. You're actually able to give back. You're actually able to reciprocate, and you're actually able to have a conversation instead of that small talk, which superficial conversation is small talk. They just typically involve routine, polite questions and responses, talking about the weather,
Yeah.
all that.
I want to kind of interrupt you for a second, if you don't mind.
No, please.
Yeah. So like active listening, people talk about active listening, and we talk about deep conversation. We talk about all this stuff. We talk about phones, very generically.
Mm-hmm.
Active listening, if you want to be good at active listening, the best way to practice it isn't to say, yeah, head nod and stuff like that. That is just that's acting, right? Active listening is being interested in what the other person is actually talking about.
Yeah. And what I was getting at is actually responding back to them and acknowledging. And
So,
dude,
whenever you talk about it, like, and they say something that you have a question on, you can interrupt, right? And if y'all go back and listen to this 30 seconds in back, I just did that to Kevin. I just did that to you. It's like, hey, you don't mind, let me, and then the thing that I would be doing wrong right now, for active listening, if me and you was talking that way, is right now I am educating. Whenever you're active listening, you do not put out your thoughts. You ask questions, right? And that's where us as men get completely ripped apart on the female world, because we want to come in and we want to tell them what to do to fix it, what to do. They don't want that. They want active listening. So that's them having a long conversation, talking about Betty at church and did this, like, can you believe that? And it's just like, oh my gosh, was somebody
good old Betty.
Yeah, right. And for us, if we want to show our women that we are present, it's like, oh, well, how did that make you feel whenever that happened with Betty? Not, well, what are you going to do about it? Not, you should go do this. Not, are you going to go back, and like, when you go back, are you going to do anything about it? Not that. Instead, how does that make you feel? Talk about her experience with it. That's active listening.
I actually got to practice this the other day, and I want to share this with you because you're going to get to laugh at this one, dude. So Erica goes to therapy every Monday. She has an amazing therapist. This guy has done more work with her in the last 3 or 4 weeks than anybody has done since she's gone to therapy for we'll just say 10 years. In the last decade, this guy has done more work in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. Done more work. I actually got a homework assignment from him. And this is where it comes. You're going to laugh at this because I want you to put yourself in my shoes and do this to Lori. Okay? So they are deep diving, and I won't get into it too much because it's very, very personal with Erica. But to sum it up, Erica does not have a relationship with her father. She cut him out, and I won't go into reasons because I won't badmouth the guy. I don't feel like it's my place to say anything negative about the man. But her childhood with him, he so severely affected her growing up that she has developed very, very negative and sometimes toxic habits that she is going to therapy for. She recognizes the impact that had on her, and she does not want, she wants to be a better person for it. She wants to grow, and she's going to therapy for it. My homework assignment, she said, I need you to come up with a list of things that you see that I do that you know were a result from my father's negative parenting. Things that you see that I have, those negative traits, those characteristics, say like narcissism. I need you to write these things down, and I need you to like put them in a list. I said, oh, I was like, okay. I said, do you want to have a conversation about this prior to the therapy session? And she said, no, I want you to seal them in an envelope, and then I will open it during the therapy session, and I will talk about it then. And I went, are you sure you do not want to have a conversation about this? Because I was like, we're working on our communication. We are working on talking to each other. I was like, do you want, I said, I need to ask you a third time. Are you sure you do not want me to talk to you about this? And just be, she goes, no, I want you to be absolutely brutally honest, because it's what I need, because I don't see them, or when you do bring them out to me, I glaze over them and I don't accept them. So right there, I immediately saw growth in her just through that little conversation we had, because I asked her how she felt about it, how she wanted me to do it. And I gave her that open-ended question of, do you want to talk about this before you go into it? Because you're going to be thrown at the wolves essentially with what I'm talking about. I said, and then this is how I ended the conversation. I said, if I ever ask you to do this for me, I expect the same from you. I want you to be brutally honest with me whenever I'm messing up. I said, you know about my history with my real father, who hasn't been in the picture since I was like 10. And I said, I've explained things to you about him, and I know he's blood. I got half my blood's him, half my blood's my mom. I said, if you ever see anything like that in me, I said, I need you to bring it to my attention. And I will sit there and actively listen. And I will ask you, like you said, how does that make you feel when I do that? How does it make you feel when I do this? So essentially, what you said about the active listening, I'm putting active listening on paper. So I have a list, like, when this happens, this is how I feel. And she's asking me to do that through writing. And I'm interested to see how this goes, man, because if this is like a good tool, we might use it in the future, for one another. And I bring that up because sometimes conversations are difficult. There's difficult conversations that need to be had. And like you said, us as men want to fix things. We have tried to have these conversations before where I'm like, hey, you're really being manipulative, or you're gaslighting me right now. Like, this conversation is supposed to be how I feel, not like how I feel makes you feel, And those conversations don't go anywhere because we both get heated and then we have to walk away and then we never come back to it, So I think this is going to be a very interesting way of me being able to talk about how I feel about what I see without having a actual face-to-face conversation with her. So that's actually taking place next Monday, this coming Monday, whatever date that is. And is it wrong that I feel nervous about doing it and being honest on that paper? Because it's like almost, I don't want to hurt her feelings, but at the same time, she's kind of asking me to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot to unbox there.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to say on that, and I'm not going to talk about it.
I mean, you can talk.
Share a story. I'm going to share a story, man, of what I'm learning, because, earlier when I shared that story about me and Lori, how we're developing differently, how I turn her into my punching bag, and also how I'm giving her a list of responsibilities that are very valuable, but yet I'm always asking for more from her. I'm always doing that, right? It really wasn't until I understood what and really defined it, like literally I wrote it down, about what it means to be life partners. And I started practicing saying this, and I started practicing saying, hey, listen, we're a team, Lori. We don't want to be in competition.
Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yeah.
Because of you, I use that term more often now.
Yeah.
I'm consciously in a state of saying we are a team. I don't tell her I love you as my wife anymore. I tell her I love her as my life partner.
Yep.
And this is me, putting my nose up your ass, brown nose, but like, because of you, I use these terms now, and little things like that tremendous effect on the marriage.
I'm glad it was able to help y'all, man. It's definitely helped us a lot. And, to build on this, like there's several different things that I want to get a message out there about. And I'm going to try to convey it to the best of my ability right now in a very short amount of time. And I think it's almost impossible to get this out there in a very short amount of time. But
speak, man, I can always edit it. I can always cut it short.
Like, if you take that ideology of any conflict, but a conflict doesn't have to be like an actual fight. It can actually just be a conversation. Mm-hmm. What is a conversation, right? Like my dad does this thing, man. I cannot stand it. And I'll tell him something and he'll ask, and I think that he's genuinely interested. And, well, like for Christmas, I've actually got one. So like, Empowered Homefront is something that I'm very passionate about and something that I'm constantly developing right now because I see a issue and I see a solution and I'm trying to help other families. But not only am I trying to help other families, I'm trying to continuously help my own family. And a byproduct of me helping my own family, or a side effect of that, is same thing you just shared, right? Hey, Eric, you saw this issue, so you started defining, are we a team or are we in competition? And that's greatly helped me, right? That little part right there that you just shared with me means the world to me, bro. And I appreciate you for sharing. With my dad, I'm working on Empowered Homefront. We have Christmas. Lori surprised me with all these hats, and she got you one too. And you didn't even tell me, right?
Yeah, dude, that was a 3-week secret.
Yeah, dude. And I was so excited, dude. Like, she gave me these hats, and not only she gave me one, she got all of the kids one and my dad one. And my dad looks at it and reads it, and he's like, Empowered Homefront, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts so bad, bro. That hurts so bad.
You sure he wasn't just asking a question?
No, he had no clue. No clue. No clue.
How'd you react?
Feeling
hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I said something that was very direct and harsh, and my natural reaction to like, man, like,
yeah, come on,
like, dude, I love my dad. My dad's a great man, but at the same time, we're talking about communicating here. And for him, whenever me and him talks, I have never, ever been able to communicate with my dad very well. And one of the biggest reasons is I never feel like he actually listens. Proof that I have for that is that story I just shared. I've shared with him these things that I'm building. He doesn't understand it, but yet I share the exact same things with my mom, and she knows what Empowered Homefront is, right? She knows how important that is to me. Mm-hmm. And then, you take that effort. Now, my dad says this thing. He's like, well, I'm talking about this just to have a conversation with you. I'm like, yeah, man, but we just talked about this last time I called you, and we talked about the exact same thing. So, like, if we're just talking to talk, like, I'd rather just not talk.
I see why you got upset now, because he knew, he was supposed to know what it was.
Yeah.
Prior to the hats being delivered.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I was a little confused there for a second.
Yeah. Because I have been sharing this with them. I talk about Empowered Homefront. I even called them for feedback whenever I came up with the name. Because, dude, I probably went through 50 to, I don't know, exaggerate, 50 to 100 different names for Empowered Homefront. As a matter of fact, I think I've actually bought 4 different domains in some type of format of this before, we came up with Empowered Homefront.
Yeah.
And like, that's a big lift for me. Like, that's a big accomplishment. Now, like this right here, this is a movement, right? It's not just a name to me. To me, it's a movement, right? It's bringing the nuclear family back to the dinner table to talk about goals, values, principles, standards. You know, it's raising boys and girls to have standards so they can go out into this world that tries to confuse them all the time, and they don't sway because they was raised to have a foundation that keeps them on a path that's true and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Empowering Homefront's about. But at the same time, you've got husband and wife. You know, it's about being a team. It's about understanding that, again, the world throws all these things at us and we start becoming competition. And this competition creates divide in our own family. It's about, hey, are we being a team? It's about growing oneself and reflecting and admitting your own faults before you blame your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
These stories that I'm sharing with you today, like that's what I'm pointing out, because the blame to Lori on, hey, you're not developing yourself. Why aren't you listening to this book? Why aren't you listening to this? Why aren't you doing this? I'm doing all this, Lori. Why don't you do it? And am I being a team player? No. Right? Instead, I'm punching her. I'm beating her up. And, you know, it's not until you really realize, like, hey, this is just the pattern that we repeat. And for me as a husband, I have to learn to accept some of this. I have to learn to accept that Lori's not going to be me. She will never be Eric. And if I continuously expect her to be Eric and respond to things the way Eric would be, then why the fuck are we married?
Right? Dude, I 100% relate to that.
So when we're having a conversation, we're having a disagreement, when we got projects, when we got companies, we got issues coming in, it's a very fine line on the battles that I choose to fight, because she has a massive workload. She's running the kids around nonstop. We got them in gymnastics. We got them in hockey. We got them in jiu-jitsu, baseball, you know, all this stuff, dude. Like, that's a full-time job. Then we homeschool our kids, right? We teach them brain food all day. That's takes 3 to 4 hours every day of her, like, planning, right? Like, the kids can get done with their brain food in like an hour, you know, and that's the rest of the day. But yet somebody has to plan that. It's not Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our portfolio, right? It's very passive. It's completely passive for me. Like, I don't do jack. The only thing I do is put out big fires. But as far as making sure people pay and collect and small issues, managing short-term rentals, stuff like that, it's all on Lori. But yet, whenever life is punching me in the face and I'm trying to move forward and I'm like, hey, teammate, come over here. I need more help. Right? Like, how does this make sense? And I say all that because, like, I am reflecting, growing, and looking forward and understanding that I'm too hard on my wife and I'm not acknowledging how extraordinary she is. Because for the longest time, I'm like, we've got all this stuff because of me. I was like, you was there, you helped me, but it was my ideas, which is true. That's a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
Could I have done it without her? Most likely, yeah, I could have done it without her. But the fact of the matter is, I done it with her, and we are a team. And the lessons that we learned, we grew together, right? But some couples grow apart, right? It breaks them. It breaks them when they're in the middle of a rehab project, and one person wants to stay at home and chill with Netflix, and the other one's like, "No, we got money on the line. Let's go to this property and make sure things are being done."
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with kids, right? Like, and what I'm trying to, like, set the stage for is there's a balance that's almost impossible, because we each have our role to play. And me being the head of the household, my role to play is to go out here and hunt, go out here and kill, bring food home to eat. My job is to set the the hierarchy standards, the principles, right? The values that we live by. Her job is to support me, and she does a fucking fantastic job of supporting me. And the way she supports me is she's there for my punching bag.
Yeah.
Right?
Dude. Yeah. All the shit that Erica goes through with all of her therapy, her medical treatments, like she's a punching bag to herself, you know? Like she is just constantly going through treatment after treatment to find something that can finally help. And you were talking about, the workload that Lori has. And I'm not putting this on Erica because I'm just as much as fault, because I could have easily asked, like, show me what you do. Show me how your day is. And I never once asked that. And I finally did, because the other day she's, her brain operates in, if I don't have it scheduled, if I don't have it planned, I'm completely forgetting about it. So I looked, and dude, she was scrolling through her alarms in her phone, just like this. And she did like 3 giant swipes, and it's just, and I'm like, I said, please stop. I said, please stop. She goes, what? And I looked, and she has an alarm every 5 minutes for 24 hours. And I went, what is that for? And she goes, oh, well, this one's turned on here because this is when I need to pack the car to take Axel out. This is 10 minutes later alarm, so I know that's when I need to leave. And dude, I said, why do you need all that? She goes, do you want me to get things done? And I went, well, yeah, absolutely. Like she sets an alarm for like clean, like stuff like that. Like every chore has an alarm, and then she has it in her Google Calendar planned. So she sees it in one place that's planned, and then another place she has an alarm. And I went, dude, that would create anxiety hell for me,
Well, I mean,
And I said,
just the turn on, dude. Like one of my biggest issues is like putting things on paper because they're so minute. Like if I scheduled everything out, like how much time does that take?
Dude, no. And I went, and I asked her, I said, why don't you just have 6 alarms throughout the day, or reminders or dings, whatever she goes, I don't, dude, this is where she really like hit me, because I was starting to like tell her how to run her day. And she goes, I don't tell you how to schedule your shit. Don't tell me how to schedule mine. And I went, touche. I said, does it work? She goes, yeah. I said, all right, I'll take a step back. And what I want to get at that is, I didn't think she was doing anything throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, and this is one thing that you'll probably laugh at me for this, because you've been a dad for, Kelly's just turned 12. I think you said you've been a dad for 12 years and counting. I expected, like, when she was doing the stay-at-home mom stuff, I expected, like, I'm coming home, the house is going to be sparkling clean. Dude, I've finally accepted the fact that you have a kid. Like, there's going to be one area that might be a little, like, goofy in the house, especially with, like, toys with, like, the young, with the young ones or whatever. And, like, I expected everything to be picked up, organized and everything. And I was like, what are you doing throughout your day? Like, there is, like, why is this over here? And then the other night, like, when I saw her schedule and now she has things planned out, and I was like, I think I don't even know if I apologized. Like, I think I still owe her an apology for it. But when I saw that and how she was organized, because she wasn't doing it in a way that I would have done it, I thought that she just wasn't getting shit done at all. And I was just using her as a punching bag. Like, why aren't you doing this? Like, this is how we're going to do shit. So now when we have these conversations, and this is why I wanted to create a family meeting, so we could have a format we both agreed on to have discussions and talk about our week and the next week coming up, is something we can both sit down and look at and go, okay, like, this works. And we both put, we both had input, And we both worked as a team to come up with this, to make this communication go better, to have these conversations. And, I guess we can start wrapping this up a little bit, but it has just been an amazing thing to actually take a step back. And even though, like you said, there are statements that you and me will both say true, like, yeah, a lot of this shit wouldn't happen if it wasn't for me. Like, if I didn't bust my ass for almost a year to get that hardship approved to come to Raleigh, none of this treatment would be taking place and she would be suffering even worse. So yes, like, that is on me. It's when we choose to hold things over our teammates' head is when that just goes crashing into just a big fire, like, that not even you could put out. Like, you're a big fire putter outer. Like, but that's something that, like, and that's where I think people start growing apart, is when, like, we start doing that kind of dumb shit. Well, and it took me almost a year in marriage. Like, granted, in May we'll be married 2 years, and that's not long, but the growth that we've had over these 2 years, and especially this last year, has been amazing. And I think that also goes back to having open conversation with other people that have more experience than you and that have the skills. Like my buddy Mark, he's not married to his woman. I mean, we call her wife because, like, he's been with her for like 10 years or something. They're just not married, but he has experience that I don't, being with someone that long. You have experience. What'd you say? You're almost, we'll just say 20 years with Lori. I call my dad and I go, Dad, what do I do here? And, my dad's a very reserved, quiet man, like, and he'll just be like, I don't know, man. It sounds like you're kind of being an asshole. And I'm like, damn, like, my dad will tell it to me like that, and then that'll be the conversation. And that'll be it. And that will be some of the deepest shit he'll ever say to me, like, the whole year, And, like, the growth that Erica and I have had over this past just year of being married together all comes down to sitting down, setting shit aside, no distractions, and having a conversation where you're open and honest and you acknowledge the other person and you propose those questions like you said. Okay, well, you just said that. How does that actually make you feel? And what are you going to do about it? And I don't know. I mean, I guess the last thing I have to say is something to the audience and the listeners is, you hear Eric and I's experience in our conversation we had for this last, yes, Eric, our experience together. You hear all these things, and we're not just tooting our own horns. We're not just blowing, smoke up each other's ass or anything. I want to challenge everybody out there to, at least at a minimum, start out once a week for 30 minutes to an hour, setting stuff aside, no distractions, and just having a conversation where you actively practice this active listening, where someone says something to you, your partner says something to you, your wife, fiance, whatever they are to you, practice going, okay, I hear what you're saying. Tell me how that makes you feel. And what are you going to do about it? If you do have a solution. If you don't have a solution, may I help? And I think that is just a very, very basic thing that has at least helped my marriage out. So that is what I'm asking the audience to do, because I know that it has helped me. I think it has helped Eric out with Lori. So, Eric, you got any last words, man?
Just to unpack that, though, it's the action, and you're actively searching for answers that has made the change that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Without the action and without you going out and searching for the answers, that change would have not happened.
Nope. Not at all. Yeah.
So, that's what it always comes down to. Are you executing? In the Deal Boss Project, I teach this ideology of to go out and discover what you don't know. Then the next step is to learn a little bit about it. And then as soon as you learn a little bit about it, you execute, right? And the execution is where you actually get results.
And then what do you do after that?
You replicate. That way you can go on and you skill stack all the way to success.
DLER. I want to make a hat out of that.
Dude. I mean, that's the goal, right? If you just constantly do that, right? Like Andy, the power list. Dude, like, listing 5 things that you do that day, like he's executing, right? That's what it's about, is execution. And like several times throughout this conversation, like you kept wanting to talk about the phones and how big of a problem that is, right? Phones are a problem. But what's the real problem is you're executing whether you choose to execute or not. And the issue is you're not aware of what you're actually executing on. So every time you pick up the phone, you're executing whether you like it or not, but you're executing in the wrong direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, well said, buddy. It does. All comes about taking action and executing. Discover, learn, execute, replicate.
Yep. That's it, man. And, all this talk about Lori and, our relationship and everything, it's me reflecting and understanding. And I literally went and, I apologized to her. I'm like, hey, I get it. And now, over executing and being aware of that, I love her to death. Like, she's absolutely amazing. But I can't expect her to be a fish and climb a tree. And every time I do, that causes hardships. But you have the polar opposite of that. And some people will not execute at all. And they're always executing in the wrong direction. And unfortunately, there are people out there who have a life partner that they're with. And if they, continue going down that road, they're going to take you with them, right? You have to have those conversations. And I think the hardest part about all this is just understanding that a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. But sometimes that man in that slogan or saying is your spouse. And, right now, whenever you talk about bottling up and writing out issues on an envelope, I want to like drop this off on you before we head out, because like if you drop off a giant list of issues on that envelope, what's the repercussions to her in therapy? But if you
that was my concern,
strategically pick what to put down, and then you make it to her in bite-sized chunks, is the most important, not only to Kevin, but what are the most important to y'all as a team? And then you only put those on that list. Right? So same thing, like I think we had a podcast a couple of episodes ago where I talk about like you gotta choose the battles you choose to win in order to win the war. Right? And it is, man. I mean, it's strategic, it's strategy. And the only reason I replicate it or explain it that way is because I think it is understood that way. Right? Like if you want to say, well, it's not right to think that, you're manipulating your spouse. Like if you want to look at it as manipulation, hey, I can't help you. Right? But if you want to look at it as you're putting in the work to understand and reflect, and you're choosing your battles in order to encourage your spouse to move in the right direction, because this shit isn't easy. And I share all these stories about, me using Lori as a punching bag, and she sitting there doing it because the whole time I'm sitting there beating her up because she won't learn a skill. That skill is just like, hey, I don't want to learn it, dude. And I just need to accept that every once in a while. Right? But I am so growth oriented that it creates massive amount of pressure on her. She just wants to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, there's always an extreme right and extreme left, and probably where we need to be is somewhere in the middle. So everything that I've said on this, episode isn't meant for someone to take it and just go, you got to do this all or nothing, because that's just not the truth. There's always a polar opposite. And all of these things, I think each and every one of us should reflect and say, okay, this is my situation. This is what I'm seeing happen. What's the opposite? And then whenever you discover the opposite, you can learn the things that can take it either way. And then you pick where you want to execute. And then you replicate, and you do that over and over again in tiny, tiny battles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pick those battles. That way you can move your spouse, right? I don't know if that made sense, man, but.
No, it did. And that is where we can end the episode on that note. So it was a powerful message.
All right. Peace.
So